To say Pokemon is on the decline would be the most untrue statement ever said on this channel. Have you seen the sales numbers? People complained about X and Y, and yet they broke records. Sun and Moon were games I dropped over how boring they were to me, yet they set records too. And then Sword and Shield came along. The biggest controversy in so long. The presentation, cheap animations, and the Dexit drama. Surely this will dent their numbers to teach them a lesson. Surely now Game Freak will be exposed for their choice of doing so little to make as much money off of their brand. They were the best-selling Pokemon games ever, until as of recent. So despite all the complaining, Pokemon is thriving more than ever, and yet it seems Game Freak was still listening to the older fans that were slowly exiting the franchise. I myself stopped playing the main games after Moon had killed my interest, as mentioned earlier. There was always a certain direction that people wanted the game to go into. One that spawned many mock-ups, fan games, and cease and desist to follow those projects. And now, that desire has been met, and it was thanks to one single moment that my interest in the franchise has been rekindled. An open-world Pokemon game where you can catch Pokemon the hard way, sneaking up to them, juking them, using bait, whatever you can think of, as long as you catch them all. That's all that matters. After almost a decade of hopeful thinking, that idea has come to fruition. But does it indicate a sign of major change in Game Freak? Is this here to stay, or a failed attempt to do something different? We'll settle the issue here. Welcome to Pokemon Legends Arceus, where legends fill the space and last for all of time in the land of Hisui, before it is known by a different name. The first thing worth mentioning about this game is that it isn't winning any awards for its visuals, that's for sure. A sluggish frame rate during hectic moments, the world looking really barren up close, or really bland looking sections. But despite that, there is some effort to improve on the design of a 3D environment from Sword and Shield. And the other thing about this subject is that this isn't what you're here for. You're not here playing modern Pokemon for only how the world looks. Despite these things I mentioned just now, the environments have a certain charm to them. It oddly feels livable, and is still so satisfying to explore. Crucial set pieces like tall grass, bodies of water, and scalable walls all feel like they're placed with purpose, be it to sneak up or to hide from the sight of Pokemon or to roadblock some players while pushing others to find ways around the problem that is in their path. One thing I can say that's looked great during Game Freak's trek into 3D is the character designs. The characters in this game stand out well and fit the era they're trying to represent, while certain characters who are the ancestors of future major or minor characters in the main games all have some traits that are either physical or emotional that can relate to said characters. Arazu and Mai share their hairstyles with their descendants, but a character like Benny is less noticeable at first. Making a note that he has some health issues and has always considered moving down south, which is Hoenn in this case. Leading the family line that ends with Wally. The main protagonists, Akari and Ray, are no different with having nods to the descendants, Dawn and Lucas respectively. They do have customizable looks like every other recent protagonist, so you're free to customize them to fit your preference, of course. But something about their designs just resonate well with me. Although at the end of the day, what matters is the design of the Pokemon, and these new Hisuian variants are interesting. The starter's new forms all have grown on me. I love Decidueye's Wandering Samurai design. It's honestly one of my favorite designs in this game. While Samurott looked a bit lazy on my mind at first, it always grew on me since it was my starter, but its signature move is Sick, which is a great way to mention that the animations have been altered mostly and are flashy, but quick, making sure the flow of battle isn't slowed down for those who want to get through these as fast as possible. The designs of these new variants of Pokemon actually disappointed a lot of fans, giving the game more turbulence before its release due to leaks. But, as I played along, I kinda got over the design of the new Mons, and that's probably for the best. I still feel like Dialga and Palkia got done a little dirty, but I'll have to get over that. Now this is potentially the surprise spot for me. I honestly expected this game to go full Breath of the Wild in terms of music implementation, as in aiming for small ambient music drops as you explore the world, And this game does have some of that, but it goes beyond that expectation. For one, most areas have some songs that trigger to remind you of what they will become one day. A big one that shocked me was when I entered the area on what would eventually become Eterna Forest. The subtle notes seeping in caught me off guard, and that's when I realized the music was getting treated a little better here. Most of the music has a lot of nods to the main games, the present world basically. When you battle the lords, you hear part of the wild battle theme from the main games, or when you battle some boss trainers, you'll hear trainer themes and even the gym leaders. I really love how they don't take over the entire song, but it's like these songs are just eventually going to evolve into these themes that we're all familiar with, much like how Hisui itself will evolve into the Sinnoh region we know today. Gameplay keeps the basic fundamentals of Pokemon intact. 4 moves only, type advantages, 6 per team, all that jazz. But it's how you catch these Pokemon that is different. Yes, you still have to find them and catch them with the Pokeball, but that's where things start to branch off. While you can try and battle Pokemon to catch them the old-fashioned way, some will not want to stick around. Timid-type Pokemon that run away when they spot you will often try to flee the first chance they get. The only way to circumvent this is to sneak up on them and catch them without being spotted. Hitting them on the back with a ball helps out even more, as it either gives you a better catch rate than normal, or if you choose to fight them, will give you a preemptive strike, like in the style of other RPGs. So regardless of intent, there's always a benefit to stealth options. Using Breath of the Wild again as an example, I like to use stealth more often than not, so I quickly got acclimated to this style of play. I'm certain those who like to hunt may have a similar level of satisfaction as well, since being patient is key to getting the best chance at catching some of those Pokemon. Not all will flee, as there are those who want you dead and will attack if they see you. At that point, battling is your best option, but how you start that fight is up to you, and that player freedom is a big benefit. There is one other change to encounters that tests any method you go about catching these Pokemon, or rather, a specific group of them. Alpha Pokemon. Giant, more intimidating, always hostile Pokemon. If they see you, they will go after you no matter how their demeanor of the normal counterparts are. These things are usually higher level than you, sometimes astronomically so, and in that case, it's up to you on how you go about it. Do you avoid them? Catching them will make them a worthwhile ally for your missions. Using stealth to either catch them with a ball or to get a free attacking turn is crucial, but they don't go down or in a ball that easily. And that's the fun part if you ask me. Another big quality of life update is that the fact that there's no need for name raiders or the move relearner. You can do both of these tasks on your own now. And there is still a move tutor who is much easier to access this time around. On top of getting access to some moves that aren't learned naturally, there are 2 new ways to use your moves: Agile Style and Strong Style. Agile Style sacrifices power for a chance at getting repeating turns. This can be even further exploited with a Pokemon with naturally high speed, as well as using priority moves like Quick Attack. Now these moves can serve as even better chip shot attacks while setting up potential combos. Strong Style does the opposite, sacrificing turns to have an even stronger attack. This is recommended for ending solo fights quicker, assuring a KO with a decisive final strike. If you miss, or it isn't enough, however, you will be wide open and more often than not, be punished. But that's just part of the risk factor, and I'm all for it. Crafting is also a way for you to get around buying the items you need to thrive in this world. From Pokeballs to healing items to bait to distract Pokemon or escaping Pokemon's gaze easier are all accessed over time via the main story, quests, and ranking up with the Survey Corps. Filling out the dex is also a little more difficult since simply catching the Pokemon isn't enough. You may need to defeat them, see certain moves, or perform various methods to fill out the dex. But you're free to approach it in any way you see fit. Factoring in the overall goal of catching them all to meet God itself, I'd say this is a very fun way to approach said goal. There's real incentive to catch them all this time. Much as the slogan inspired a generation or two of Pokemon fans, there wasn't a real proper reward to getting all 151, 251, etc. Pokemon, and that goal has been getting only harder to complete as time goes on. So going with a very specific dex is much easier on the player.
making it feel much more attainable and realistic. Obviously, there will be a lot of time sunk into this endeavor, but the reward feels more substantial this time, and it feels worth it. The story of getting essentially isekai'd into this world feels a bit unusual if you've never played another spin-off like, say, Mystery Dungeon. I think it would be fine to just have your character from this time period, but it's not a deal breaker. The people of the region slowly warm up to you after fearing you from the start, and while you don't notice it as much, unless you go out of your way to do so, it does feel historically accurate at least. Your rival character, if you can call them that still, is much more expressive this time. Akari and Rei, the opposite gender protagonists you didn't choose, have some substance to their character, but their expressions and wit are their big selling points, clearly trying to improve from the rivals of recent years. I wouldn't put them up there with Blue or Silver, but they're solid enough as a base to where I want to see how they improve upon that. It's also interesting to see the ancestors of these characters I mentioned before have similar or vastly different roles. Mars' ancestor switches roles, while her partner in crime still maintains an antagonistic role throughout. The biggest role reversals, however, are behind a spoiler warning, so if you don't want to know the rest of the main story, I suggest you click on the time listed on the screen to skip straight to the final score and the conclusion. Shit. The Licky Licky's back. Wait, what? Oh my god! Saving the lords of each land is a fun challenge, a balancing act of throwing bombs while trying to avoid attacks and understanding the patterns and gestures is a fun challenge that freshens up what would be a normal boss fight. Building a team in mind to beat the specific opponent makes for a fun thought experiment, since it's much easier to fit Pokemon onto your roster compared to the main games. EV training is much more streamlined and ties into catching Pokemon by releasing ones you don't need or want anymore. Once the lords are quelled, the distortion starts to worsen and you are scapegoated, leading to what I would call a Star Wars moment. And this moment is where the classic George Lucas line in which it's like poetry, it rhymes, fits best. And just like in the original, the red chain is involved, except you make it with the noble cause of trying to calm down the legendary Pokemon of your choice. Oh, and you have to make a choice between the two clans. It's nothing major, thankfully. The two leaders get along so well despite their bickering, so it just makes sense the choice isn't so big. It only leads to which Pokemon wants to help you and which one is Berserk. In my stream run, I chose Irida so Palkia helped me stop Dialga, who seems to have a bad habit of going Berserk. Must be a primal thing. After that, the goal is simply completing the Pokédex and going on a roundup of collecting the missing Mons as well as the other legendaries to meet Arceus. But there's just one person who stands in your way. Remember how I talked about the characters who are the ancestors of the modern-day ones from various games? Like how Arazu is Mars' ancestor, or Silene is Cyrus's, or how Professor Rowan's ancestor is Kamado. Our brains like to familiarize recognizable characters with their unique traits. Think of Mario with his iconic Italian accent, and you see why some people were initially concerned with the Mario movie. Game Freak knows this and exploits our expectations. You expect Silene to be a villain, just like her descendant, and Rowan to be of impeccable character, when in reality Silene values her subordinates, and Kamado, due to past tragedies, makes harsh calls and reckless decisions despite the unnecessary cost. Arazu is the polar opposite of her ancestor, and that's why she's so beloved. Her design probably helps with that too. So now we go to Cynthia's ancestor, or rather, ancestors. She has two of them, Volo and Kogita. Now this plays at your expectations in many ways. By design, you expect Kogita, but her personality doesn't completely match Cynthia's. She does have that cool composure, but she chooses to take a back seat to conflict, unlike her descendant. But Volo, now he has some of her traits. Like Cynthia, he is eager to learn Hisui's history and lore, and even wants to allow the help of a complete stranger if it means being one step closer to the truth. You project Cynthia's history with his actions. The poetry, it rhymes here. But that's where your expectations come back to bite you. Over time, after the incident, he tells you about Giratina, its history, and you realize something. This guy has something Cynthia doesn't. desire. The difference between seeking knowledge and seeking power is subtle and sometimes hard to distinguish, but with him, it's clear he doesn't just simply want to meet Arceus for the fun of it. And when you climb up to Spear Pillar, he peels off his sheep's clothing to reveal himself as the wolf he really is. You were warned about this from the moment you met him and the introduction of Cogita. Their names are Latin, and Cogita comes from the famous phrase, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Volo means, I desire. A completely different connotation and implication. Cogita has much knowledge to share, but her passive nature indicates that she is content with simply knowing and sharing with those who wish to learn. But Volo has a clear hunger that is never satisfied. Both are Cynthia's ancestors with two sides of her on display and shown in a different light. And with Volo, you see those traits at their worst. His battle also has her theme, the piano opening a clear giveaway. Even in a different timeline, you cannot escape her. Anyone who has played a Sinnoh game knows this medley of piano notes will have fear piercing their hearts. And it's at this moment you realize, this is his theme, not hers. It's such a clever twist that I don't know if they'll ever get away with it again if they make another game like this. And why do I say that it's his theme? Well, I'll get to that in a moment. When you beat his team, which eerily matches her Platinum team, he's not done. Remember how he kept boasting about Giratina? How do you think he knew who that was? This was never a 6v6. It's actually a 6v7. You fight Giratina in both forms, and you don't have time to heal between rounds. This fight will kick your ass if you don't take your time playing the game, growing stronger like I did. And I lied to you. You actually have to face 8 Pokemon. Giratina cycles through both its forms when you face it, so it's actually a 6v8. You couldn't draw it up any better. This is the ultimate challenge, and by God, they hit this fight out of the park. For gameplay and story reasons that go beyond this game, what we are familiar with in Diamond and Pearl or Platinum is actually an echo of this moment. This moment is part of Gen 4's legacy. When he is finally bested by you, but before he leaves, he reveals he was the one who caused everything to go wrong in Hisui. The distortion was his and Giratina's doing. Before he takes his exit, he makes a proclamation. Someday I'll solve every riddle in the legends of Hisui's Pokemon, and on that day I'll stand before Arceus at last. No, I will conquer it. No matter how many years, how many decades, how many centuries it takes me. And that's why I say it's his theme now. Cynthia is following his twisted dream, and she'll never know that is the origin of her family's legacy and end goal. It started from Volo's sense of desire for truth, and that is an amazing way to further expand upon an already iconic trainer's legacy. That's why I keep saying that word, legacy. It is the entire crux of this game's importance to the generation it's building off of. I spent a lot of time talking about this moment, and we haven't even talked about God itself. So let's fix that. After spending so many hours catching, evolving, and training Pokemon, you finally get the opportunity to do what few in the world of Pokemon have ever done. Face Arceus. Ascending the stairway to the heavens themselves, a realm with a very specific pattern on the ground, you only had 1 week in 2009 to even have the chance of understanding on your own. Arceus silently challenges you to the hardest battle you'll have. All those challenges with the Lords, Dialga or Palkia, have culminated to this final battle, and Arceus will not hold back at all. Using your best team and reacting to the attack patterns is the key to winning, and after much toil, alongside my first and only defeat in this entire game, I best Arceus and receive it to complete the Pokédex. Lately I've been putting more effort into completing the Pokédex. Not too long ago, I completed a Gen 1 and Gen 2 Catch-em-all challenge, and I also completed the Paldea Pokédex.
This one was especially worth it, as they don't treat it as a side thing that you never have to do. I enjoyed this scenario where completing the Pokédex was the main goal all along. While I don't want all games to do this, I believe Legends Arceus' style of play fits better for challenges like this. After discussing all this, and seeing the next generation of Pokemon, Scarlet and Violet, is this a sign of Pokemon changing its ways? Will this style continue? Well, some things from this game have carried on, but nothing too significant if you ask me. While there are rumors of another game in this style floating around, we won't know until Game Freak announces more games. However, I'm certain there will be room for both of these styles of play. Whether or not it will stick around for as long as the mainline game's style of play, that's something we'll have to wait for the answers to. I can confidently say that this game retains that spirit of Pokemon, catching them, filling the decks, battling with them. That spirit remains constant, and in my opinion, even better here. Now, let's give it a score. The visuals are definitely weak with the textures looking so bare bone, but they do a better job of making this work with the familiar sights and locations. As I said before, the character designs are really great for recognizing and spotting small details, both on their very beings, and in some cases, the environments they surround themselves in. Professor Laventon had a hand in designing the base, with some Pokemon in the Galar region appearing on the building, like Galarian Weezing. It's details like this that you can appreciate. The use of calligraphy aesthetically for borders and texts, also with immersing yourself in this era of time. Again, the region could definitely feel barren at times, and that's hard to ignore, but I can respect and appreciate the details that are here. A rating of 15. Audio is where that immersion really completes itself. The ambient sounds of nature and Pokemon cries echoing around you, the music chock full of references to the modern era, really emphasizing that we are in a different time in an otherwise familiar world. I will say, there are some scenes I would feel would be stronger if there were voice acting. A rating of 22. Gameplay is much more different in terms of combat. Some moves have been retooled to this new turn system. Quick Attack can help you farm more turns, while Hyper Beam sacrifices more to hit harder. Of course, you can affect these even more with the new Strong or Agile styles. I appreciate these new options to consider for strategy to use or be prepared for. Catching Pokemon has never felt so much more fun. Trying to catch something with pure stealth is so enjoyable, and a nice change of pace compared to battling everything to make it easier. That isn't bad by any means, but I'm just glad they added new ways to try and approach wild Pokemon. Way better than random encounters. I give this a 22. The story for this game is way above average for the Pokemon standard. The fact the setting is so unusual helps sell the slow reveal of the region even more, as its foreign nature causes a reasonable amount of caution. But over time, you meet more characters who are ancestors of iconic figures we know from today's time period. This recognition leads to some great twists on their descendants' dynamics, with a character like Silene being one of the best examples of this. With how both the mythos of Sinnoh and Arceus are expanded upon tremendously here, it culminates into one of the best examples of good storytelling and world building by Game Freak in a while. A rating of 24. So if you combine the scores, then we get a subtotal of 83. I did find this game hard to put down at first, but completing the decks was definitely a slog. Despite having most of the Pokemon caught, having to spend a lot of time catching more, using them, or just finding really obscure mons like the fossils made it hard to keep the motivation to play onward more difficult. I'll grant it 3 bonus points, and the game gets a grand total of 86, a B+. I feel there is plenty of room for this style of gameplay to grow, but whether they expand upon it or never touch on it again, that's up to them. For now, all we can do is enjoy the legend, appreciate the history of Hisui, and witness its evolution into the great region we know as Sinnoh today, where many more stories built upon the land's legacy are being told that will shake up the region just as it did all those generations ago. Bye.